Alien Baron gifts a human and alien girl in a box. As a token of gratitude, the transport ship Meridian drifted through the asteroid field with practiced ease as Captain Jake Morrison scanned the debris field ahead. The mining operation had been going smoothly for 3 months now, and the crew had settled into a comfortable routine. Jake had been working the Outer Rim territories for nearly a decade, extracting rare minerals from dead worlds and forgotten asteroids. It was honest work that paid well enough to keep his small crew fed and his ship running. The proximity alarm chirped softly, drawing his attention to the scanner display. A sleek vessel of unknown design was approaching from the starboard side, moving with the fluid grace that marked it as clearly non-human in origin. Jake had encountered enough alien ships to recognize the telltale signs of advanced propulsion systems that human technology still could not fully replicate. His communications officer, Lisa, turned from her console with a puzzled expression. The incoming vessel was broadcasting on standard frequencies, but the message was unlike anything in the database. The translation software was struggling with the complex linguistic patterns, though it managed to convey the basic meaning. The ship belonged to Baron Thane of the Altari Republic, and he was requesting permission to come aboard. Jake knew the name from the trade reports. Baron Thane was one of the most influential nobles in this sector of space, controlling vast shipping routes and mining operations. The fact that someone of his stature was personally visiting a small human mining vessel was unprecedented. Jake granted permission for the Baron to dock, though he wondered what could have prompted such an unusual visit. The airlock cycled open to reveal Baron Thane himself, accompanied by 2 guards. The Altari were tall, graceful beings with pale blue skin and elongated limbs that moved with an almost ethereal quality. Their eyes were large and luminous, containing depths that seemed to hold ancient wisdom. Baron Thane wore robes of deep purple that seemed to shimmer with their own inner light. Baron Thane approached Jake with careful, measured steps and spoke in accented but clear English. He explained that 3 days ago his personal yacht had suffered a catastrophic engine failure while traveling through a particularly dangerous region of space. The ship had been adrift and defenseless when a pack of Reaper pirates had detected their distress signal. The Reapers were among the most feared criminals in known space. They took no prisoners and left no survivors behind. Baron Thane and his small crew would have certainly perished if not for the intervention of Jake's mining ship. Jake had responded to the distress call and engaged the Reaper vessels in a fierce battle that had lasted nearly 2 hours. Jake remembered the incident clearly, though he had not known the identity of the ship he was defending. The Reapers had been using an old Kestrel-class frigate and 2 smaller fighters against what appeared to be a luxury yacht. The odds had been heavily stacked against the defenders, and Jake had made the split-second decision to intervene. The battle had been brutal and costly. Jake had lost his weapons officer Tom in the fighting when a Reaper torpedo had breached the forward section. The mining ship had taken severe damage and barely escaped with its hull intact, but they had succeeded in driving off the pirates and rescuing the survivors from the yacht. Baron Thane explained that according to Altari law and custom, Jake's actions had created a life debt that could only be repaid through a gesture of equivalent value. The Baron had spent considerable time researching human customs and psychology in order to select an appropriate gift. He had concluded that the most suitable offering would be something that humans would find both valuable and meaningful. The Baron's guards brought forward a large, ornate container that appeared to be crafted from some kind of crystalline material. The box was roughly the size of a coffin and seemed to pulse with soft bioluminescent patterns. Baron Thane explained that the container held his most precious gift, a young Altari female named Kira, who had volunteered to serve as Jake's companion. Jake stared at the box in shock and confusion. The very idea of receiving a sentient being as a gift was deeply disturbing to his human sensibilities. He tried to explain that humans did not practice slavery or ownership of other sapient creatures, but Baron Thane seemed genuinely puzzled by his reaction. The Baron clarified that Kira was not a slave, but rather a willing participant in an ancient Altari tradition. She had been selected from among many volunteers, and had undergone years of preparation for this role. Her service would be temporary, lasting only until the life debt was considered satisfied. She would serve as Jake's advisor, guide, and companion, helping him navigate the complex social structures of the Outer Rim territories. Jake remained deeply uncomfortable with the entire arrangement, but Baron Thane made it clear that refusing the gift would be considered a grave insult. The Baron explained that Kira had already been awakened from her preservation sleep and was aware of her circumstances. To reject her now would bring shame upon her family and potentially destabilize the delicate political relationships that kept this region of space relatively peaceful. The container began to open with a soft hissing sound as the preservation systems deactivated. Inside, Jake could see a young Altari female lying peacefully as if in deep sleep. She was smaller than Baron Thane, with the same pale blue skin and luminous eyes. Her hair was long and silver, and she wore a simple white garment that seemed to be made from some kind of organic material. Kira's eyes fluttered open, and she sat up slowly, taking in her surroundings with calm curiosity. She looked at Jake with an expression that seemed to combine respect, curiosity, and perhaps a hint of nervousness. Baron Thane spoke to her in their native language, and she replied with what sounded like formal acknowledgement. The Baron turned back to Jake and explained that Kira was fully trained in human customs and psychology. She had studied human history, culture, and language for the past 2 years in preparation for this assignment. She understood that humans had different social structures and would adapt her behavior accordingly. Jake found himself in an impossible situation. Every instinct told him to refuse the gift, but he could see the political ramifications of such a decision. Baron Thane controlled much of the trade in this sector, and his displeasure could make life very difficult for Jake and his crew. More importantly, Kira herself would suffer the consequences of his refusal. After several long minutes of internal struggle, Jake reluctantly agreed to accept the gift. Baron Thane seemed greatly relieved, and immediately began explaining the details of the arrangement. Kira would serve as Jake's cultural advisor, and would help him navigate the complex web of alliances and rivalries that dominated the Outer Rim territories. The Baron also provided Jake with a substantial credit transfer that would more than cover the repairs to his ship. He explained that this was merely a token of appreciation, and that greater rewards would follow if Jake proved himself worthy of Kira's service. The Baron made it clear that Kira's well-being was his primary concern, and that any mistreatment would result in severe consequences. Baron Thane and his guards departed shortly after leaving Jake alone with his new companion. Kira stood quietly near the container that had been her home for the journey, watching Jake with those luminous eyes. The silence stretched between them as Jake struggled to process what had just happened. Finally, Jake spoke, asking Kira if she was truly willing to be here. Her response surprised him with its directness and clarity. She explained that she had volunteered for this assignment because she believed it would help strengthen the bonds between humans and Altari. Her people had been watching humanity with growing interest and respect, particularly their willingness to help others even at great personal cost. Kira told Jake that she had studied his service record and was impressed by his consistent pattern of helping those in need. The incident with Baron Thane was not an isolated case, but part of a longer history of selfless actions. She believed that working with him would provide valuable insights into human nature that could benefit her people. Jake began to see Kira not as a burden or a gift, but as a person with her own motivations and goals. She was clearly intelligent and well-educated, with a genuine desire to learn about human culture. Perhaps this arrangement could work if they approached it as a partnership rather than a master-servant relationship. Over the following days, Jake and Kira began to establish a working relationship. She proved to be incredibly knowledgeable about the political situation in the Outer Rim territories, and her advice quickly proved invaluable. She helped Jake navigate several complex negotiations that resulted in lucrative mining contracts. More importantly, Kira began to feel less like a stranger and more like a trusted colleague. She had a dry sense of humor that caught Jake off guard, and she seemed genuinely interested in learning about human customs and traditions. Jake found himself looking forward to their conversations and began to appreciate the unique perspective she brought to their work. The crew initially reacted with suspicion and confusion to Kira's presence, but she won them over with her helpful nature and genuine concern for their welfare. She proved to be skilled at resolving conflicts and soon became an informal mediator when disputes arose. Her presence seemed to bring a sense of calm and stability to the ship. As weeks passed, Jake realized that having Kira aboard had transformed not just his business prospects, but his entire outlook on life. She had opened his eyes to new possibilities and had helped him see the broader implications of his actions. The mining operation had evolved from a simple business venture into something that felt more like a mission. Jake and Kira developed a deep mutual respect that gradually grew into something resembling friendship. She taught him about Altari culture and philosophy, while he shared stories of human history and achievement. Their conversations often lasted late into the night, as they explored the fundamental differences and similarities between their species. The transformation was not without challenges. Jake struggled with the knowledge that Kira's presence was the result of what he considered an archaic cultural practice. He made it clear that she was free to leave at any time, but she seemed content to honor her commitment to Baron Thane. Kira explained that her service was not about obligation, but about opportunity. She had been given a chance to serve as an ambassador between their peoples, and she took that responsibility seriously. She believed that the relationships she helped build would have lasting benefits for both humans and Altari. As their partnership deepened, Jake began to understand that Baron Thane's gift had been far more valuable than he had initially realized. Kira was not just a cultural advisor, but a bridge between worlds. Her presence had opened doors that would have remained closed to a human operating alone. The mining operation flourished under Kira's guidance. She helped Jake establish relationships with suppliers and buyers throughout the sector, leading to a significant expansion of their operations. More importantly, she helped him understand the complex web of alliances and rivalries that shaped politics in the Outer Rim territories. Jake came to realize that his rescue of Baron Thane had been a pivotal moment not just for the Baron, but for the entire region. The act had demonstrated human courage and compassion in a way that had resonated throughout the Altari Republic. Kira's assignment was not just about repaying a debt, but about building a foundation for future cooperation. The partnership between Jake and Kira became a model for human Altari relations. Other nobles began to take notice of their success, and similar arrangements were established throughout the sector. What had begun as an uncomfortable cultural exchange had evolved into a new form of diplomacy. Jake found himself at the center of a transformation that extended far beyond his small mining operation. He had become an inadvertent ambassador for humanity, demonstrating the values and principles that made humans unique among the species of the galaxy. His willingness to help others, even at great personal cost, had created ripple effects that would be felt for generations. The story of Jake and Kira spread throughout the Outer Rim territories, becoming a symbol of what was possible when different species worked together in mutual respect and understanding. Their partnership had proven that cultural differences need not be barriers, but could instead become sources of strength and innovation. As the months passed, Jake realized that Baron Thane's gift had been perfectly chosen. Kira was not just a companion or advisor, but a catalyst for change. Her presence had transformed his life in ways he could never have imagined, and had opened possibilities he had never dreamed of exploring. The mining ship Meridian continued its work in the asteroid fields, but it had become something more than a commercial vessel. It had become a beacon of hope and cooperation in a region that had long been marked by suspicion and conflict. Jake and Kira had shown that understanding and respect could bridge even the widest cultural divides. Their story became a legend whispered in spaceports and trading posts throughout the galaxy. It was a reminder that sometimes the greatest gifts come in the most unexpected forms, and that true wealth lies not in material possessions, but in the relationships we build with others. The bond between Jake and Kira had grown far beyond the original terms of Baron Thane's gift. They had become partners in the truest sense, working together to build a better future for both their peoples. Their success had proven that cooperation and mutual respect could overcome any obstacle. As Jake looked toward the future, he knew that his life had been forever changed by that fateful encounter with Baron Thane. The Baron's gift had been more valuable than any treasure, and had opened doors to possibilities he had never imagined. The young Altari woman who had emerged from that crystalline container had become his most trusted companion and his window into a larger universe. The story of their partnership would continue to inspire others long after they were gone. It would serve as a reminder that the greatest adventures often begin with a single act of kindness, and that the most valuable gifts are often the ones we least expect to receive.